All right, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans, who I have to say, I don't know how many people outside of Titans fans are going to be clicking on this video or that interested in this team. I think this is one of the more fascinating teams this offseason, and I actually think there's a lot of ways they could go about improving this roster and going from, being a team that is now picking first overall to quickly getting back into being competitive, or at least having a real shot at being competitive if they can do some right things here. There's also a lot of different ways they could take this offseason. So let's get into it, see where they're at right now, what their biggest weaknesses are, and how they can improve. First, I include this in most of these videos. This is where they ranked in terms of PFF grades for each positional category, and you see some tough grades. First, passing, worst in the league according to PFF. That should change, right? You have the first overall pick. I have to imagine they're going quarterback. You don't have to, but I don't know. I did my evaluation of Cam Ward. I think he's worth a first overall pick. Maybe there's a quarterback you like more, but in my opinion, you got to go quarterback first overall. That's what I would do. The issue is, if you do that, not exactly putting him in a great situation. Again, according to PFF, 25th in receiving and pass blocking. Calvin Ridley was kind of holding that receiving core together, according to PFF last year. 31st run blocking, 26th rushing. Defense was good at stopping the run, but then not great pass rush or coverage either. Again, that's what PFF has to say about all of that. But I want to go to this chart now, doing something different that I don't do in most of these videos. These are the offensive line, I would say the starting five here for the Titans. Now, Lloyd Cushenberry got injured last year. Daniel Brunskill ended up replacing him at the center position, but he's usually a guard, so I'm going to put him there. But yeah, Peter Skoronski, J.C. Latham, and Nicholas Petit-Frere at the tackle positions. And to be honest, it's just not a very good tackle position. So what you see next to their names, that's where they ranked according to PFF grades. And while Skoronski and J.C. Latham were okay, according to PFF, the other three positions were, quite frankly, a mess. And to me, I think that there is a clear area where they need to improve. You can't bring in a rookie quarterback and have an awful offensive line. You don't need it to be elite, but it can't be awful. I do have to say, this is part of my critique sometimes so J.C. Latham, a lot of people felt like wasn't really worth the pick when they drafted him early on in the draft last year, but he should be an effective tackle. This is part of why I don't love drafting simply for need, is because, well, sometimes you don't get the best player available. Now, I'm not sure who they should have gotten or what should have worked, but I do have to bring that up. That's not the typical mindset that I love from a team. But nonetheless, this is where you are, and for what it's worth, Latham has been an effective piece. You're glad you have him, even if you would have rather had him for later picks. Sometimes you don't get a trade down partner, and it is what it is. Him and Skoronski are two players I would want to keep going into next year. Quite frankly, the other three I would just want to replace. And if you want to do that, how would you go about doing it? Well, first, let's look at cap space. So their 2025 cap space is at $44 million. In 2026, it'll be $110 million. A big part of why you get so much is because they're not paying a quarterback as of right now. But there's actually ways they can even make the cap space larger. So I'm going to put some players on the screen, and I'm going to put the number next to them. That's how much money the Titans would save if they just outright cut these players. And you're going to be upset if you're a Titans fan that I even am putting some on this list, but it's not just cutting. Some of these guys would be trading. So Jeffrey Simmons, for example, you would never cut him in a million years. He's an amazing player. But what you might consider doing is, hey, if a team's willing to give you a first and a third or first and a second or something like that, maybe 2 firsts for Jeffrey Simmons, do you then consider, he's only 27, but do you then consider doing that and trying to put the talent on the offensive side of the ball? Personally, I would rather get rid of someone else, like a Harold Landry. I think I keep Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard, who I still put on the list, but those are guys that, would help out the young quarterback. But I think I'm getting rid of Landry, Snead, or Awuzie here. I think, Snead's an interesting one. They traded a 3rd round pick, so, the first pick of the 3rd round belongs to Kansas City, which I'm sure will annoy a lot of Chiefs haters, but they thought they were going to get a good player out of him. Snead didn't play great his first year. Do you hold on to him? Do you not? I think I would consider, again, it's not necessarily about the players themselves in a lot of these cases. I think what I would just do is I would want to shift the assets we have onto the offensive side of the ball to help out a potential young quarterback. a couple of free agents that I would spot. So again, if we're saying you need a tackle, a guard, and a center, I just went on to PFF free agent board and said, who's the highest guy that they think is the best guy on each of those positions? That would be Ronnie Stanley, Trey Smith, and Drew Dahlman. You see the price tag next to each of those guys. And to be honest, I wouldn't hate this strategy at all of like, let's just spend a bunch of money on the offensive line. These are good players. Maybe they don't all hit, but if 2 out of 3 hit, we're still in a much better position than they've been in these past couple of years. You don't have to go with these guys if you think there's a better fit and if you think you can save some money and still get a good player. But I'm honestly signing 3 offensive linemen, I think is what I'm doing, because you don't know who's going to be there at pick 33. Let's just make sure that we, get some players here. They would have $44 million in cap space if they didn't cut anybody, and if they spent $53 million on that top offensive line stuff that I'm bringing up, well, you wouldn't quite have enough money. So you'd have to get rid of at least somebody. So that's what I think I do. I think I probably move off of like Harold Landry and just, again, see if you can get value for him. If not, then, do what you can. But I probably move off at least one of those players. I get the cap space to where I can then sign 3 offensive linemen. That doesn't fix all of the issues, but it still helps. Now, again, you did that. There's other issues with this team. For one thing, you just made your defense worse by getting rid of a defensive player. But at the same time, I think I would like this offensive line. You get a young quarterback. You have Calvin Ridley, who I do like a lot as a player. And then you have draft capital to where you can draft somebody. You look at their upcoming picks. So, like I said, no 3rd round pick. They have a 1st, a 2nd, 2 4ths, 2 5ths, a 6th, and a 7th. So not having that 3rd round pick does sting, given that it would be, a top 75 pick. But at the same time, you do have, a very early pick in the 2nd round. You could go receiver there. And I said earlier, I don't love drafting specifically for need. The one time I guess there's 2 times I'm usually okay with it. One, if you're going for it, trying to win a Super Bowl right away. The other would be if you're trying to help out a young quarterback. Adding a receiver would help a lot. So again, this whole video makes no sense if they decide to go with Travis Hunter or something. But I mean, is that really moving the needle that much? I feel like you're doing more of the same. I do think there's reasons to get excited if you're a Titans fan. I can see things working out. But ultimately, those are my thoughts. That's what I would do, is I would add some offensive linemen. And because you could add a receiver in free agency too if you want. There just isn't a great fit. It feels like the top, okay, listen, maybe Chris Godwin becomes available. I wouldn't hate throwing a bag of money at him. You just don't know if those top guys are going to be available. They probably aren't. And kind of the mid-tier guys, I feel like, are older, and there's a lot of a risk factor there, which I wouldn't hate adding someone, a veteran receiver as well, just to help out the young quarterback, right? But like, is that a great option? I don't know. So that's why I think drafting a receiver, and you can get good receivers in round 2 as well, that might be the move. But yeah, I don't know. Those are my thoughts on all of this. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.